Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
Welcome to another episode of Philly Fortune Talks, where we spotlight the journeys of Philadelphia's most influential and innovative leaders. Today, we are honored to introduce Dr. Christopher Deussing, a highly experienced mental health clinician and entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in the field. He is the owner and director of Integrative DBT Psychotherapy, LLC, where he leads a team of talented clinicians providing integrative and evidence-based psychotherapy services to diverse populations. With his expertise in dialectic behavior therapy, DBT, contemporary psychoanalysis, and ketamine assistance psychotherapy, KAP, Dr. Deussing is dedicated to offering individualized and holistic care to his clients. He earned his master's and doctor of clinical social work degree from the University of Pennsylvania and completed an intensive training program in psychedelic assisted therapies at California Institute of Integral Studies. Dr. Deussing is also the host of the Talking Cure with Dr. D podcast and has published several articles on therapeutic theory and practice. Additionally, he serves as an instructor for multiple colleges and universities and volunteers as a crisis clinician for the Burning Man Project's crisis intervention team. Join us as we explore Dr. Deussing's journey, his innovative approach to mental health, and his commitment to guiding the next generation of clinicians. Let's get started on Philly Fortune Talks. Pleasure to have you today,
Jake. Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for the introduction and warm welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So your career spans over 25 years. Can you share what initially motivated you to pursue this career in mental health?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people come to this field for professional reasons. However, I think a lot of people too come for personal reasons. As an individual, I have benefited greatly from working on my mental health in my personal life. And I also too just have a core characteristic of wanting to help people. My father said that from a small age, I was always just trying to help. And I consider that really a core part of my personality. And in combination with my personal experience with mental health and recovering from trauma and mental illness, that really drives me in my pursuit of providing therapeutic services to diverse population. In terms of Philadelphia, I have to tell you, I started my career in the war zone of Kensington, doing drug and alcohol counseling. And I really remember those roots in terms of where I've come from. Even though I'm in private practice now, I just want to acknowledge, the rough and tumble start that I got in this business because I feel like that also has imbued me with a degree of grit and perseverance, and also too just real world experience as to what this business is about. So that's my answer to a really big question, but in service of time, I'll tailor it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, that is definitely real world experience right there, getting started in Kensington. That had to be an interesting journey.
That had to be an interesting journey. And also too, again, it's such a memorable time, even though it was over 20 years ago. This is when I was an undergrad during my summer break. My mother had recovery housing in Kensington. And so she let me sit in on meetings like AA, 12-step meetings. And then also too, I would just meet individually, not providing therapy, but just talking with people in the throes of addiction and realizing that it's so much more than the behavior of the drug use, which a lot of people get really focused on. It's about the family that people have come from, the trauma, the background, the bigger picture, which is also too another part of my practice in terms of trying to see people as holistic human beings, not just behaviors to be corrected. I was reading an article recently, Jake, and it said something really beautiful. I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit, but paraphrasing it, it says, "Are we going to treat our clients like they are problems to be fixed or sunsets to be appreciated?" And that's not meant in
Mm,
a toxic positivity way. It's more so meant we just want to see people as whole and not dehumanize them into separate parts.
right, that's a good way to put it. And it's interesting because a lot of people don't realize how close to home um, you know, addiction is. It's in a lot of families. Like for instance, mine. I have a lot of family members that have been battling with addiction their whole life and still are. And the heroin epidemic, everything like that. So to see that from a family standpoint, it's like, okay, there's a few people in the family that have addiction, right? You were in the trenches where it was full consumption of it, right? You're all around a lot of it 20 some years ago. So that's awesome that you gave your time for that.
Yes, definitely a tour of duty. And my hope is eventually, for Kensington, and I don't think things have gotten better in Kensington. If anything,
Mm-mm.
with the fentanyl crisis, things have probably devolved a bit. But my hope for Kensington and all of Philadelphia is really, can we grow through these dark times? Because there's a lot of light in this city. I love Philadelphia. I come from Northeast Philadelphia, went through the public school system in high school, and so, I feel like it's really at the root of my being, this city, and I have a love for it.
So what inspired you to found Integrative DBT Psychotherapy LLC? What's your
Yeah,
vision for that and for their overall practice?
yeah, this is it's interesting because I stumbled into group practice. I in 2012 I had my last institutional job at Belmont Hospital, and even though I was one of their highest producers, unfortunately I got laid off
Mm.
due to just due to budget, and so I got angry and decided to go into private practice for a month or two and see if I could do it. I literally rented out an office on Rittenhouse Square, and I said, I'm going to do this for a few months and see if this sticks. I didn't have any patience, Jake. I sat at my desk and literally was cold calling doctors' offices, offering to take people out to lunch, starting therapy groups with two people. So, again, really humble beginnings. And I always try to remember that. So, anyways, I had several years of private practice as a sole proprietor. And then in 2020, I was in the office and I said to my colleagues, "You know what? There's this cold going around. I think I'm going to go home and work from home for a couple weeks." We all know what happened in terms of COVID,
Hmm.
and that really changed the playing field because before then, Jake, I didn't know that virtual therapy was really a thing. I thought it was inferior to in-person therapy. And with that, then I found myself at home with a lot of time, wanting to get away from my family, right? Because of being homebound. So with the online platforms, it was very easy to kind of scale up. And with the surge in mental illness at that time and people just being cooped up, I decided to open up a group practice, and that eventually grew to about 7 clinicians during the pandemic. Right now, we're at about 6 clinicians. And in terms of the vision moving forward with integrative DBT and psychotherapy, I have a vision in terms of really delivering mindful, creative, and innovative and integrative therapies where we're taking various modalities and different models, different practitioners, and melding them together. In the therapy world, we oftentimes get siloed in our different therapies. Like, I'm a DBT therapist, I'm a psychoanalyst, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. I have a vision in terms of really trying to bring these things together, also too possibly with the umbrella of psychedelic assisted therapies, which is still a burgeoning, really growing field, especially in Philadelphia. And having it be an inclusive business that, sure, we're here to be in private practice and make money, but coming back to my social work roots, we're also here for the greater good. We're here to provide high quality services to people suffering from a wide range of mental illnesses and afflictions, and also for the greater good in terms of education and getting my material out there, getting my thoughts out there, not being afraid to establish my voice, because growing up, I was a pretty severe introvert. And luckily enough, I've been able to expose myself to speaking up, such as through podcasts like this, and share my thoughts and ideas, especially now that I have time, now that I finished my schooling, finally, at the age of 48. It's never too late. And that's another message I really want to communicate to people. It's never too late.
Oh yeah, never too late for anything. You know, people think that the older they get, they can't do as much. It's like, look at it the opposite way. You're X amount of years young, not X amount of years old. You still have a full life ahead of you. Just go out there and do it. Um, but no, I love your approach. You know, it's not the typical, you know, one size fits all traditional medicine way. Let's put kids on whatever, Ritalin, Adderall, or all these drugs that are terrible for you, and you know they don't actually fix the root cause. It's just a buffer for pharmaceutical companies to make more money. Hey, we'll just prescribe you this. Hey, we'll prescribe you this. We'll put your kid on that. You know, I was on, my God, as a kid, I was a little nut running around all the time. So I was like, my parents had me on Ritalin, you know, Adderall, Concerta. Man, I had like depression, so I forget what the hell that was that they had me on. Um, but like my father hated it. You know, he was just like, you know, my kids, you know, moods change, you know, and it's like synthetic meth practically. So there's like these other things out there that your practice does that are natural and have been around for a long time. And actually, big pharma and governments have actually tried to shut it down because it actually works.
Right, right. And I love what you bring up, Jake, because we live in a culture, and I feel like it's accelerating with the relentless crush of technology. And I'm not talking down on technology, it's how we use it. But
Hmm.
we're in an age of quick fixes, immediate gratifications. I click a button and I can pretty much buy anything on the internet. I can research anything on the internet, right? It's immediate dopamine hits. And you bring up a great point in terms of, I think also too, one of my missions is to kind of return to the root of psychotherapy, which it's not about whatever modality you practice or whatever the hot and upcoming therapy is. It's about the relationship. So I wonder, you know, if as a kid, perhaps you had a relationship with a therapist, maybe were able to participate in some furious sand play therapy or something like that. Maybe we wouldn't have had you on all those medications. Nothing wrong with medications. I've seen them save so many people's lives. And can we move a little bit away from the immediate gratification and the fix-its,
Hmm.
maybe focusing on human relationship, connection, community, and how that heals many, many things.
Yeah, I'm totally about that. Now, hindsight looking back, you know, I look at, you know, hey, I couldn't concentrate in school. Well, how can you tailor it to that individual to where it fits their needs, right? Things of that nature, like, you know, like you said, being more individualized. But no, that it's great. So what have you you know, incorporate, let me re-say that.
Yeah.
You've incorporated several innovative therapies into your practice. What key strategies have helped you successfully integrate those approaches?
Mindedness, um, humility, in terms of realizing that I I know nothing. I mean, you can put all the letters you want behind your name, and in actuality, you know, I try to remind myself that there is no one all fix all. And also, too, I really believe that the therapists like 50 years from now, 100 years from now, are going to be looking at the work we're doing, I'm doing. They're going to be like, those guys were poking around the dark. So, with that being said, you know, I also too come from a liberal arts background. I went to Science College. I graduated with the triple major in philosophy, English, and religion. So I'm very open-minded, kind of artistic. I see science almost as an art as well, where we have to be open to that we don't have the answers, and we have to be willing to experiment. And also, too, this makes me think, as therapists, we don't necessarily choose our clinical orientations. Our
Mhm.
clinical orientations choose us, as in many businesses, as in terms of how we practice business. What fits and what works with our personality and who we are, I feel like that is so much more wise and holds a lot more wisdom than any real textbook that you can read. Again, nothing wrong with the textbooks and the theory, but what fits our soul, what fills our spirit, and that I think helps in the pursuit of integrative psychotherapies. Plus, also too aligning with like-minded individuals.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny too because literally tomorrow I leave for a spiritual event.
Yeah,
Um, so it's like you gotta. It's holistic approach, psychedelics, mind, body, spirit, like all that in one flows together.
it's all interconnected, and that's the other thing too. I think spirituality, a lot of people view that sometimes as a word that, oh, I don't want to use that word. And the definition of spirituality is, being realizing that we're connected to something greater.
Yeah.
If we run that definition all the way through it, it means it says the sacred and the divine. I actually We can truncate that and take that out of the sentence. If we can go to retreats or do activities such as yoga, whatever connects us, go out in nature, whatever connects us to the fact that our egos are so constraining and that there is so much more to this world. And the way that we move through the world, since it's interconnected, profoundly influences everyone around us. That's also too a great aspect of mental health. We have to feed ourselves spiritually. Spirituality is not a dirty word. Let's also too have open conversations about things like this, and also agree to disagree sometimes, because through that conflict can come progress.
Yeah, I went to it's called the Temple of the Universe about a year ago. It's
Wow.
Michael Singer's um temple, if you ever heard of them. He wrote the book The Untethered Soul. And I was not a spiritual person whatsoever. Well, not spiritual. I wasn't, yeah, you could say I wasn't spiritual. Like I went to Catholic school, but it's like, I don't go to church anymore, anything like that. But it was like I went down there and the teachers, the instructors were like, spirituality doesn't mean a god, a creator. Like it does, but it doesn't have to be that. Spirituality can be your mind, your thoughts, your inner person. And you don't have to put this, creator figure on it to be a spiritual person. Like you said, yoga, breath work, tempo breathing, silence, all those things bring out spirituality, grounding outside, you know. Um, Going for a walk, all that stuff it brings the inner spirit out in you.
Yes, yes. And you bring up a great point. Silence, silence. Our world is deafening. I mean, and a lot of people don't realize that our brain has not developed at the same pace as technology and industrialization. Even driving in a car, our brains get tired because there's just so much information to process, and we're not made to move at 65. If you're in New Jersey, 85 miles an hour on the highway.
The turnpike.
The turnpike, right? They could call it the Autobahn as far as
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
concerned. But, silence is such a huge thing because a lot of times we are distracting. We are distracting from our internal states. We look at our computer screen. I look at you, right? And I'm focused on you. We look at the phone, which talk about addictions. We are involved in an epidemic of digital addiction. We're focused on the phone, right? And then we move away from what's happening internally. And
Hmm.
then when we turn inside with silence, a lot of times that's really, really uncomfortable. However, in that space of uncomfortability, as in the business world too, to tie this a little bit into entrepreneurship and business, those uncomfortable spots, right, where a business may be struggling or we're trying to reinvent ourselves or reinvigorate our business selves, those are spaces for growth. We have to learn to sit in the uncomfortable spaces and be able to tolerate the distress. I'm so happy you're going on a retreat tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a group of guys. That it's a men's group. It's called
Wow.
EMM, Every Man's Mastermind. And it's very spiritual based. Yes, we're all high performers. We're entrepreneurs, really great at our crafts, but spirituality is a big thing in that mastermind. It's not about, it's like other masterminds may be like all business driven. well, yeah, this one's business driven. However, we have to have our spirit in check first so that everything else can work appropriately. Because being an entrepreneur, you know, your spirit, your inner person can definitely take a toll very quickly if you don't, check in with it. So yeah, it'll be a fun time. And hopefully come back a better man.
I love the fact that you brought that up because, June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I also think too that, with men, we have so much work to do on ourselves and just becoming more emotionally fluent with ourselves, able to
Mhm.
speak our minds and how we're feeling, like actually saying how we're feeling instead of being the strong stoic type. And I also think that entrepreneurship can be a little bit of a misnomer because it can feel like, oh, I have to operate solo. I have to take everything on myself. And it's not necessarily about that. I've actually learned as I've matured as an entrepreneur, there's more strength in community. There
Mhm.
really, really is. When I was younger in my career, it was all about like the solopreneurship, right?
Yep.
Now I realize, you know what? I can do great things and affect greater change as with a team of people. So happy that you're bringing the men's mental health component. That's something too. That's a mission of mine. We
It's
really need to get that out in the open.
it's super important, because as men, we're mostly brought up to cover our feelings. Don't cry, don't, bundle it up, don't talk about it. Don't don't be a wuss, stuff like that. So big, strong, all that stuff. And that's how I was raised. So, come to like relationships and stuff like that growing up, it's like, oh, well, I don't know how to talk about problems. I don't know how to express how I feel, because it's just the only thing I've ever known was to keep it inside and bundle it up. So, you know, being a part of this other mastermind that I was talking about has helped me as a man, talk about my feelings and how to deal with those inner challenges. So it's good. Yeah, it's a very important point in our world today is men's health. You know.
So yes, and men feel just as strongly as everyone else.
Yeah.
Men feel, and two, another thing I'll just touch on really quickly is business and personal life. It's not separate, right? Our businesses are a direct reflection of who we are and how we are doing. If we are not doing well, or we're unbalanced, or we're burned out, or we're disconnected in our personal life, that manifests in the business life. Anyone who says you keep the business business and the personal personal, I see that to a degree. I also see it's all interconnected, right?
Yeah,
There's
it's
a little
fully
bit of
integrated.
spirituality. Yes.
Yep, fully
Yeah.
integrated.
Yeah.
Um, but how's your experience in various, therapeutic disciplines influence your leadership style at your practice?
Well, my original one of the big three orientations that I have is modern psychoanalysis, and that's old school. This kind of goes back to Freud, right? However, it's not classic analysis, which is what Freud came out of. The assignment with modern psychoanalysis is to say everything, right? And you get on the couch, you lay on the couch, and you literally say everything that comes to mind.
Hmm.
Now, what I've learned as a leader and how I've matured as a leader is you want to hold space for other people to be able to say everything
Mhm.
and not necessarily immediately move to the fix it or the authoritarian kind of leadership. I've found that when you can help people say everything and be authentic, who they are in their practice, in the business, they come to their own answers oftentimes, and I don't need to fix it. So I think too, learning to trust people, finding high quality people to work and collaborate with, people who are on the same wavelength, and learning to trust people and trust in the process and not having to control everything. Because with modern psychoanalysis, trying to say everything, that requires a leap of faith. We're not containing it with a manualized protocol. It takes creativity. That's another thing I've learned from the modalities. And having faith in myself, the people I work with, in the process. Trust the process, right? Does it get more Philadelphia than that? I don't know who they're going to bring in. They got to bring in somebody. We got to get Embiid that championship.
So, when building your team, what qualities do you prioritize and why?
I look for people who are self-starters, even if they're working under me or I'm supervising them. I really look for people who are independent and are free thinkers. I look for people that are hungry.
Mm.
I And this is something too for people out there. If your resume doesn't exactly fit, like if you want to go into private practice, right, you may have this misnomer that, wow, I have to go get licensed and then I have to go work in an institution. I have to go. If a resume comes my way and then I interview someone and they're hungry, like they have that innate hunger, that's really the core thing I work that I like to work with, because you can teach someone, you can train somebody to do a task, to do a job. What you can't teach is that drive. And
Yeah.
I think that in private practice and in the business world, at least in the for-profit business world, that is a necessary trait. Because if you don't have that, it's kind of like a dog eat dog world in terms of the private practice market.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. So balancing your professional commitments with personal life can be challenging. We just talked about this, right? Life and business, right? Total integration. But
Mhm.
what daily habits or routine help you stay focused and effective?
Silence, you bring like meditating, but I don't mean meditating in terms of sitting in front of the Buddha and going om for 45 minutes. Literally just sips of mindfulness, like 5, 10 minutes there, right? Also too, I have to say creativity. I just got on social media a year ago because I finished my dissertation and then I realized, wow, I don't have a social life anymore because I was so focused on finishing that, so in the academic tunnel. And then I got on social media, and that is really, I have to say, activated the creator in me. And I don't mean the usual influencer or kind of trying to get a ton of likes or followers. I really try to be mindful with my social media use in terms of creating content that hopefully moves people and makes people think.
Mhm.
Another thing too is exercise. I mean, I'm in my late 40s. It's no longer about benching 300 pounds for me. Although in the earlier days, it was a little bit more about that. It just more so is just about moving my body and being aware of, talk about interconnectedness, how the mind and body are so connected. And then even though and this may sound a bit paradoxical, even though I'm out of school, I actually find myself reading a lot more, and I'm reading academic articles. I don't know, maybe I have this unconscious drive to still be in school. And I'm being fed so much by reading theory just for the sake of reading it, not to finish an assignment or anything like that. So I'm finding a lot of that as well. And then also family, relationship, connections. And you know what? I've been playing a lot of tennis. That helps out a lot as well.
Okay. I like it. I like it. It's funny because when I originally had the opportunity to
Yeah.
start meditating, I thought meditating was the sitting in front of the Buddha and humming and
Mm,
and I would get so mad because I'd be like, how can you people meditate so well? Like I have all these crazy thoughts in my head running around rampant and I can't turn my mind off. And the instructor was like, that's meditation. You're acknowledging your thoughts. You're sitting there not doing anything but listening through your thoughts and letting them go. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys do it X way and it looks amazing and you have no thoughts. He was like, well, that takes a long time to get to that point. But no, that was funny. Um, but yeah, you also said something else. Um, that vibed with me. Oh yeah, reading. You know,
reading.
when I was in school, man, I hated reading. I hated reading so much, but now I almost read a book a week. I have a library pretty much in my house of tons of books. I mean, I love reading now, but back in when I was in school, geez, you couldn't get me to read anything. So, and it's not like you said, it's not like that you still want to be in school, or you enjoy it.
And to circle back to you asked me what the mission of my business is. This is more so a mission as an individual. I want to push the theory forward. There's not many theorists in the psychotherapy, psychology fields anymore. It's more so manualized treatments. Like here, let's create a manual for treatment. I really kind of want to go back into some of the older theories and meld them with the new theories to push them forward, study the integration, the intersectionalities, because that's what makes my heart sing. I guess at my heart, I am a philosopher. A fun fact about me is I actually have half my master's in philosophy from Westchester University. Um, I dropped out with a 4.0. I was doing great, but I was like, I'm not at a top tier university, and I'm not going to be able to get a philosophy professorship. There's about 200 available in the country. So, anyways, just trying to do reading and feeding ourselves, whatever that is, in addition to trash reading as well. Like, sugar reading, wonderful. Let's do that. And let's feed ourselves. Let's feed our brains. Let's actually open up a real book, like a paper. Let's journal too. That's another thing I do, Jake, to take care of myself. Let's get some of these thoughts out on paper, which is a form of meditation. Lastly, I'll just add, we don't need to sit and do a real meditation that works for me is taking a walk. And can you, instead of feeling yourself move through the world, can you shift that and have the world move through you? And that
Okay.
for me is a profound meditation that I do daily on my walks.
Yeah, like I said, I had trouble meditating. So what I do throughout the day now is, tempo breathing. So I'll do tempo breathing, 3 times a day just to kind of like reset instead of trying to sit and meditate for 10, 15 minutes. For a while there, I was doing it in my morning ritual where, like you said, journaling super important, affirmations, visualization. I was doing the meditation as well. But for me, it's more suitable to do the tempo breathing. But I do like going on a walk, and I do that. I do that. I go around and walk around the block with my dog and stuff like that. But um,
Yeah, yeah,
integrating. So
integrate. Mhm.
your work often involves cutting edge therapies like ketamine assistance therapy. Can you share an example of how these therapies have made a difference for your clients?
Sure. I have one particular individual who was really stuck in a creative rut in terms of just feeling stuck in life. And what I really like about, and here's the big thing, ketamine assisted psychotherapy, CAP, KAP, right? The psychotherapy is still the same. Like
Mm.
at the base level, it's still the talk therapy, it's still the somatic therapy, working with the body. The ketamine, though, I look at, and other psychedelics, unfortunately, MDMA was rejected by an FDA panel recently, which is a setback for psychedelic medicine. However, I think it's going to continue to progress. But with ketamine, I almost see it as, how can I put this? A bit of a spiritual example, a bit of
Hmm.
a shot of spirituality that we can put into any therapeutic process, as at least as long as it's not counterindicated by like a psychotic disorder or something like that. Anyways, it can help lift someone out of this world, out of this dimension, and into another dimension, and kind of maybe blow the doors off the usual perception for a while. Now, the thing with ketamine that's really nice is about 45 minutes, hour, you're out of it. It's not like a longer trip, like acid, lysergic
Yeah.
acid, where you're in it for 6 to 8 hours. But so with that, with this particular case, after a couple of ketamine sessions, this really lit up their imaginative soul. And now they are back in school. They are painting, they're writing, all this where I could have kind of gotten to it in usual psychotherapy, traditional psychotherapy. However, melded with the therapeutic relationship, adding the ketamine, I would say, man, compressed years of
Wow.
psychotherapy into those experiences. Plus, connecting us with a greater whole. And also, too, curiosity. That's the other thing. I think that with this case and other cases I've seen, psychedelic experiences, mindful psychedelic experiences, can really ignite a curiosity within us, almost like a baby. If you ever see a baby or a toddler interacting with the world, they'll do something like put a spoon on their head because they don't know what a spoon is supposed to do.
Right.
I find that that can be something that really helps adults, because if something we need to be reminded as adults and entrepreneurs who are so serious about business is we need to play, we need to be imaginative. Men too, right? We need to be serious men. We need to relearn how to play. So I hope that gives you a little bit of color around the ketamine assisted psychotherapy.
Absolutely. What upcoming trends or opportunities in mental health care are you most excited about, and how are you preparing for them?
I think the psychedelic therapy is a upcoming, although I think on the East Coast, we're a few years behind the West Coast. I
Yeah.
talked with West Coast colleagues, and it's a little slow in Philadelphia. I thought that we were there. So we aren't there. The ketamine and psychedelic therapies above ground are still kind of coming online, I would say. And I'm trying to prepare for that by making a part of my practice it, by encouraging my clinicians to think about getting trained in it. In terms of the other trends, it's almost like trends I don't want to see, that I actually
Mm.
think about, like, what don't we want? And we've seen the proliferation of like online platforms like BetterHelp, online therapy platforms. It's almost like churn and burn, though, because the therapists there are underpaid. They have immense caseloads, and that's almost like what I want to move away from. So upcoming trend, now that I'm thinking about this out loud, saying everything, right, is how can we better take care of our clinicians, right? And out of that, if we're able to take care of our clinicians, comes better healthcare. In addition to that, I think that we are going to see integrative therapies eventually, where we're talking about inclusivity and really how can these therapies synergize versus being like, well, it's this therapy for this disorder, it's this therapy for this disorder. More so being like, okay, we have these therapies before us. We know nothing. Remember, we know nothing. Let's be imaginative and creative and innovative and cross-pollinate. And that's push that forward along, hopefully with theorists like me sitting in darkened rooms, reading academic articles, pushing the theory forward, and maybe hoping that my curiosity and my enthusiasm rubs off on the next generation.
That's great. Yeah. I feel like everything starts on the West Coast, and it takes a
Yeah,
while for everything to actually get here on
yeah,
the East Coast. I get that's just how that works.
yeah.
Psychedelics is very big over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Dre and Tupac had it right with California Love. It all starts on the West Coast, and then comes to the East, and then bounce it back west. And you know what, Jake? I'm just spitballing with you here. That also too is a huge thing that we need to move forward. We need to take a step outside of our culture, outside of our American westernized culture,
Hmm.
and combine East with West. Everybody thinks like psychotherapy began with like Freud. All due respect to Sigmund, he incredible, right? And a lot of these things existed in Zen Buddhism, right? Eastern philosophies. I think in our Western hyper accelerated culture, we lose sight of the indigenous roots, of the
Right.
roots where all this has come from. So I'm glad I'm glad the Tupac and Dr. Dre and triggered that, because the innovation too is in the combination of those.
Yeah, and like you said, getting out of the American way of seeing these things as bad. However, you know, these things have been around for centuries, thousands of years in tribes and um, using rituals and everything like that. And it's like these things are very safe. It's just the American way, or the American eye, or the government or whatever said, hey, no, these are bad. And yeah, they could be bad if you abuse them like Americans do. But if used correctly, they're a saving grace.
Absolutely. If used correctly and responsibly. And America's great. This is a fucking great country,
Absolutely.
even with all its flaws, in a world that is increasingly moving to autocratic states. We are a country that has managed to hold on to our democracy and liberties. And so with those liberties comes great responsibility. So I think with the responsibility aspect, sometimes I think we lose sight of that. We're all about personal liberties. Like,
Hmm.
I can do what I want. I can say what I want. Free speech. A lot of people, though, I think lose sight of that. Well, what's the responsibility of my behaviors and actions on the greater whole? There's
Right.
something to be said for American hyper individualism, especially the entrepreneur spirit, and just kind of American innovation and pushing that. And let's realize there's a whole other world around us. So,
Right. Of course. So what are your long-term goals for your practice and how do you plan to achieve them?
I'll retire next year. Um, I used to be a lot more of a goals guy, in terms of like setting goals, like 5-year plan, 10-year plan. As I've matured, and you know what, life has punched me in the face,
Mm,
particularly too, when I was going through my first round with my doctorate, you know, I took a lot of things for granted, mainly my eyesight. And then I developed a very serious eye disease, keratoconus, which just blew up any goals. And
wow.
I pretty much was going functionally blind. What that experience taught me, Jake, is we can do the goals, we can do all that. However, I'm more of a process guy now, in terms of if my heart and spirit are aligned with who I am and I'm authentically uh, true to myself, the outcome comes, the goals come. And also too, just touching on like the business and the personal, in terms of just personal happiness. And that isn't necessarily like a big house or a certain amount of money. It really, again, is, am I at peace with myself and who I am, and the person I am as an individual, the person I am with my family, the person I am in my business, right? Out of that kind of comes the goals. However, with that being said, I just want to maintain my good health as much as possible and semi-retire as soon as possible, and get a little bit out of the rat race.
Okay, yeah. I look at it as like the pillars of wealth. Like you said, financial goals isn't everything, but I call it like the pillars of wealth. It's financial wealth, health, love, happiness, contribution, and spirituality. That is the umbrella of wealth. All right.
Mhm.
Everything, if you lack in one, the others are going to go down. So it's like, okay, people have to stop thinking of wealth as in, you know, financially. People are super wealthy with kindness, with happiness, with love. It's funny. My mom texted me the other day. She was like, said something, well, I'm not rich or something like that. And I was like, Mom, you are rich. You just don't know it. You're rich in happiness and love.
Right. In here and now too. I just want to highlight that too, Jake, because there's a famous book by Ernest Becker, won the Pulitzer Prize in 72, I think 72 or 73, called Denial of Death. And Dr. Becker's, he postulated that, especially in American culture, we run around and we are denying death. We have
Mm,
these kind of immortality projects that we build. Like, I need to scale up this business to $1 billion business, right? And we don't realize that we don't know how much runway we have left in life, right? So we have the here and now, and we have our health. I like to replace wealth, that W, with H, health. And
hmm.
if we have our health and are living in a healthy way in the here and now, again, the outcome is what it is. And you ask what my goal is. I too would like to, and this may sound a little bit like grim, but I would like to be on my deathbed, if that's how I'm going to die, right? Because by not denying death, by accepting the fact that we are going to die, comes liberation. If I can be on my deathbed, surrounded by family, and say, you know what, Chris lived a full life, and could. He was the best man that he could be and strive to be. Not a perfect man, right? Because we can get caught up in that game so much. But if I can say this was a good life lived, then you know what? That's the goal, man.
Yeah, I'm with you there. surrounded by a family, going out with no stone unturned, right? Just full of happiness and joy and, a life full of experiences and memories.
Yeah, yeah, and the whole spectrum of experience too, the happiness, joy, despair, right? Darkness. Without the light or without the dark, we cannot have the light. So the whole spectrum of human experience, just accepting that and
Hmm.
realizing, the myth of happiness is life isn't necessarily meant to be lived as perpetually happy. It's meant to be lived in terms of just being mindful and aware of the whole spectrum of experience. And ultimately, too, I really believe in the strength of family,
Yeah,
and having a healthy family life.
absolutely. That's super important. So if you had one piece of advice to give to an aspiring mental health professional
Mhm.
looking to make significant impact, what would that be?
Yeah, don't wait. If you want to make significant impact, you can. Significant impact starts on a micro scale, though. It starts about, helping people on an individual basis. And if you have big dreams and big ideas about how to change this world and the mental health care system, we need them. Uh, so speak your voice. Don't be afraid, no matter what stage in your career, right? Don't be intimidated by people with the letters behind their names.
Mm,
Some of the most brilliant things that I've heard have come from people who are at the beginning of their career. Be open to learning and get mentorship. This is something I wish I had gotten a little earlier in my career, and is a big pursuit of mine currently, is to mentor people, to teach people, to accelerate their growth and catalyze their growth, especially if they have that hunger. Because again, we can read all the books we want. I think, though, what's most invaluable is experience. And where do we get that? We get that from our, borrowing a more kind of maybe Eastern term, right? Or indigenous term, our elders,
our
right?
elders.
And that's one thing that American culture, I have to say, we are a little bit bent up about that because we, as a culture, tend to lock our old people away, right? And the wisdom that is so inherent there gets lost, right? And so really seeking out mentorship. Also, I'll say realize that there are so many paths to becoming a therapist or a practice owner. I took one psychology class in undergrad, and now here I am. Right. So those are some of the nuggets of wisdom I would hope, and two, just keep your chin up and remain resilient because this is a hard field. This is hard work. A lot of people think it's all about helping people, and it's like in the movies where everyone's having aha moments. It can be a grind, and take care of yourself as well.
So for listeners who want to connect with you or learn more about your work, where's the best place for them to go?
You can go to www.integrativedbt.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll post my contact information, Jake. And also too, you can keep an eye out for me online because I'm trying to increase my online presence. Because even though I'm a Generation Xer who still wants to go back to rotary phones and in more of an analog time, I want to go back to vinyl records, right? I realized that this incredible tool called the internet and online presence, and finally social media for me, can be a way to amplify my voice and get it out there. So I really
Awesome.
appreciate this opportunity, Jake. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, we pleasure having you on, and I look forward to getting your message out there, because it's super important.
Yeah, yeah. Have a great retreat, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.